Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch.
Good evening, my name is Harrison Watko and welcome to our program. Now let's look at the headlines. The world celebrates one of the actions the Philippine government has taken into account, and this by no less is the Bangsamoro agreements. Now, interestingly enough, these agreements were held in another country that brokered this, which is Malaysia, but no less than the world was sitting by watching. Congress sent 6 representatives to witness the signing and the agreements, because from here on in is when the real work happens. Now, what happened over the week, we need to understand that is not the conclusion or the creation or the law that will replace the ARMM into the Bangsamoro entity and the agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, the understanding here is we are well on our way, supposedly, allegedly, as planned, if on track, if anything, that now the legislation needs to be put together. A transmission commission has been put in place, basically to ensure that within 3 months the framework will be in letters and words that will compromise whatever agreement, hopefully, as the President is hoping, will become his signature landmark legislation for his establishment, for his administration. Ladies and gentlemen, to help us understand exactly what's going on, ito po, timing na timing, and I'm so happy, I'm glad, I celebrate the fact that she has made time to come here into our studio. We have representative from the ANAK MINDANAO party list. We have Representative Sitti, Djalia Hataman. Hataman. Mali ang pronunciation ko parating Hataman, mabilis yung pala, Hataman. Yes. First of all, Kong Sitti, kamusta ang Congress? Enjoy ba kayo? Kasi ngayon, napasaba kayo dyan, nasa party list, you won undecisively. I mean, talaga, andiyan ka. Alam mo, mahirap ang buhay politiko rin dyan. Hindi na balik kay Governor Jib, sanay na siya.
Yes.
How has life transitioned for you?
Of course, I always introduce myself as non-politician. Hindi ako politiko. For the longest time, I've been with the civil society, and then I served in government as Executive Director of National Commission on Muslim Filipinos. So talagang, even if Mujib has been in politics for years now, ako talagang hiwalay yung mundo ko sa kanya. But as a first termer po sa Congress, talagang yung baptism of fire sa amin, really, I mean, all neophytes share this sentiment. Bigla kaming, yung issue ng PDAF, no?
Oo nga, nasunog bigla kayo eh.
But okay naman, we're adjusting, and personally, I take pride, no, and honor in being able to represent our constituents in Mindanao, and not just the Muslims, because Amin is a tri-people party list, no? So kahit ho doon sa mga simpleng committee meetings, committee hearings, minsan medyo nailalabas na put forward po natin yung concerns and interests of the Indigenous Peoples, the settlers, and the Moro people.
Dapat, may enough representation ba in your mind for the Muslim people?
Kulang pa rin po.
Kulang,
especially po sa executive. We're still trying to... Isa kasi yun sa mga agreements ng final peace agreement is to have at least representation in the different executive offices. So
doon kinukulang sa executive.
Kulang po.
And the development in Mindanao, marami pang that is desired by far,
yes.
in spite of. Now, you have been in the news for many, many years because of the infighting, the conflict. And once I remember you told me when you were credited for the outstanding Congressman Awards. You were saying it's not all that easy to represent a minority group,
Yes.
most especially when, for the many decades that have come and gone, you have not gotten your fair share from Imperial Manila. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir.
Parang ganon. And then tuloy, the perception that has been generated by media is you're in total conflict, di ba? And war. Hindi naman talaga, correct?
Hindi, oo.
You're just trying to survive and survive your constituents
Exactly.
to give them some dignity of
Exactly.
life.
We always say nga po that the issue basically is an issue of survival. Ganun lang talaga kasi ang paulit-ulit naming sinasabi, ang problema po namin, hindi po nangyayari kahapon lang o nung isang taon lang. We're actually speaking of a historical injustice dito, no? So, and because of this, we also recognize the fact na yung solusyon sa issue namin, hindi rin pwedeng overnight din lang. It has to be a very comprehensive approach. And again, as I said, we recognize the fact that if you speak of Mindanao, you're talking of basically 3 different people, 3 different cultures and faith, no? So, dapat talagang inclusive lahat ng usapin. Inclusive yung usapin sa kapayapaan, inclusive yung usapin sa development, sa kaunlaran.
Pag sinabi mo yung tatlo, ano yung tatlong different religion?
Tribe people po kami.
Tribe
So
people.
it's the Moro people,
The Moro.
the settlers, non-Muslim
Yes, yes.
settlers, and of course the Indigenous people na talaga rin namang alam natin.
And the Indigenous is now what you're promoting as the Bangsamoro.
The Moro people.
The Moro
The
people.
IP iba din. Although they are also included doon sa, yung kanilang interest is also included doon sa Bangsamoro because there are certain areas na may presence ang IP.
To go straight to the point, in spite of the diverse cultures, ethnic backgrounds, heritage, history, and naiwan na nga talaga ng Imperial Manila yan, napabayaan for not for anything, but in the last 50, 60, 70 years.
Yes.
Is there a solution? No, I mean, before we go into the details, because we are making strides, supposedly. The President, no less, and his cabinet, and whole of Malacanang is ecstatic. They are bullish. Congress, no less than the House Speaker, is bullish and very upbeat,
Aggressive, yes.
aggressive. Ngayon, talagang pushing, di ba? Kumbaga, pushing legislation. Is there a clear solution after, what, 100 years?
More than, oo.
100 nga, 100
Mahirap po
years.
para ho yung tanong nung aking 12-year-old son.
Yeah, yun ang magandang tanong, di
Yes,
ba?
because when we were celebrating about the FAB, he actually asked me, is this the solution to the problem?
Smart kid.
Yes, so he gave us a hard time, but we would like to think this can be a solution. Although we do not say that the Bangsamoro Basic Law itself is the solution kasi depende pa rin ho sa amin yun how we will implement it.
What a nice way to put it. It goes back to yourself.
Yes, basically po.
So you're not blaming anybody, kayo muna.
Dapat kami yun kasi ang isa kasi sa mga sentiments namin palagi is pinapaikot kami. We are being
Confusion.
manipulated. We are being, well, it also goes back to the point na why do we allow ourselves?
Good point.
Diba? So, sabi nga namin, like personally, we support the Bangsamoro because we believe that this can be a solution. But then again, it would all, kami pa rin, like what happened to ARMM.
Yes.
Many of those who have actually reviewed the law said that it is a good law.
It was a good law.
It was a good, meron pa naman ho.
Meron pa naman. It is a good law. The spirit of the law was correct.
Yes,
because
yes.
if only contained and followed strictly,
Yes.
tama yung intention of the law.
Exactly. Okay.
Kaya lang, nag-misstep here and there for whatever reasons. Now, conflict has stayed in your history as you grew up in the area, and you've seen all the different legislators and leaders that you've had. And we have had many agreements with government, even with the international community.
Yes.
But for some reason, frustrates all of us and have failed. Why will this not fail? Yan. Ganda, no?
Technically speaking, siguro, one of
It's still vulnerable. Pwede pa rin.
Very much. Just like any law.
Okay.
Just like any system that you put in place. But one thing good about this Bangsamoro Basic Law is from the very start when we had the framework agreement and the Bangsamoro, although as you mentioned po earlier, it was basically just an agreement to agree. No? So, kaya nung
Correct.
time na yon, we were really saying, hindi pa to, hindi pa ito to. So, kailangan po nating bantayan the process that it will go through. But one of the things that we observed dito sa Bangsamoro is that inclusive siya. The MILF has been consistent in their statements, and this was also reiterated by the chair of the panel na sabi nga ho niya, incidentally nagkataon lang that he is the chair nung panel, but this is for the people, and we're really banking on that. In another statement then we said na this agreement is not just for between the GPH and the MILF, just like sana yung agreement before between the GRP and the MNLF, hindi lang between them, but really the people themselves should take ownership on the Bangsamoro.
Alamin nila and be part
Alamin
of
and
it.
really be part. Huwag na ho nating hayaan na on the sideline lang tayo, and then at the end of the day, pagka medyo hindi maganda yung nangyari, we blame,
But in your part as a legislator, even as the governor, your husband, Majid, it is not just the armed conflict that is the focus, although in media that seems to be the perception with the MILF and now what we call the new term, the spoilers.
The
diba?
spoilers?
But even before we go to the spoilers and all of that, it is not just the armed conflict. It is
Definitely.
prosperity.
Definitely.
It is the required prosperity, the infrastructure,
Definitely.
which should take center stage, diba?
Exactly.
Which is what you're doing, diba?
Exactly po. Kaya nga minsan tinatanong namin, etong law na to, at the end of the day you ask, will this bring food on the table?
That's what's important.
Yun will this send our children to school?
Ayun.
Will this cure our sick elders? Yun pa rin if I may share po a story,
Please.
yung Zamboanga, what happened in Zamboanga.
The siege.
The siege. We actually have a community in Sulu na kung saan meron po tayong mga MNLF relatives. Nung nangyari po yung Zamboanga, we called them up and asked if meron ba sa kanilang sumama. And it happened na itong community na to ay isa na ho siyang cooperative ngayon of coffee farmers. So nung tinawagan namin sila, are you in Zamboanga? May sumama ba sa inyo? And they said, wala, kasi we're busy grinding coffee. Marami kasi kaming order.
Ang galing.
So parang it really made us realize na yun ang importante sa tao.
Yes. Food prosperity. And hopefully with government support to improve the social nets
Yes.
ng mga tao, be it for hospital, Medicare, and infrastructure pag
Exactly.
kailangan. The MILF, which is very much part of the agreements coming into the table, that's one thing we seem to have overcome based on mga nababasa ko po,
Yes.
na ando doon sila, gusto talaga nila.
Yes.
In fact, ang pinag-usapan nyo na is the transition of the laying down of the arms
Yes.
and the inclusion into the armed forces of the Philippines,
Yes.
which is terrific because the last time this was done was Marcos' time. But you now have what we call, it gave birth to spoilers at nananakot. Ito na naman, back again to Miswari, back to MNLF. Tsaka hindi lang sila, naging dalawa, di ba? May nag-splinter group. Ang tawag, BIFF.
Yes.
How do you handle, kasi parang they're straight fundamentalist They take it to the extreme, di ba? Parang ganun. Ikaw as a legislator, as a leader, whether you like it or not, you're on center stage Ikaw ang titirahin nila, ikaw ang babatikusin nila, di ba? Miskin gusto mo, basically, ang habol niyong dalawa ng mag-asawa is economic prosperity
Yes.
Di ba? Ang politiko, kung pwede, iwan na lang sa labas Kayo na lang mag-away dyan, di ba? Parang ganun And yet, balik ng balik ang politiko, kung di sa dyaryo, sa TV, sa radyo. Kaya nga ito maganda, kayo mismo nagsasalita Di ba? Paano inahandle yung mga ganyan? Iwanan na lang national government, kayo na lang. Hindi rin
Hindi rin po.
Collateral damage ang mga
Collateral
constituents
damage.
mo So, how do you handle that? Ang hirap to sleep at night.
Very hard, especially if you're talking about your very own people.
Exactly. Right.
Sabi nga ho namin yung nangyari sa Zamboanga, we condemn the act, but how can you condemn your very own people? Diba? Parang masakit yun for us. May mabigat siyang dalhin. But,
Conflict.
conflict. But of course, isang realization po talaga dun sa nangyari is that when we speak of spoilers, especially after we really got to talk to some of those who were there, who had first-hand information, marami din ho sa kanila naging biktima rin nung yung sumama. Kaya kung ano man yun yung gusto naming ipaintindi Kasi if you speak of the MNLF, well, we know then na meron ng different groups of MNLF. We have the Miswari faction, yes.
Hindi lang naman siya lahat
Hindi lang ho siya lahat. So siguro, isa din yung sa pwede nating tingnan kasi yung ibang mga MNLF, talagang they also support them. Not just perhaps the peace process, but they also are, looking forward
Progressive
to
naman.
Progressive. Oo. Yun nga ho yung shinare ko sa inyo, di ba? They were MNLF combatants, pero they chose to be coffee farmers.
Ang galing. Biro mo,
Ang galing,
hindi sumali.
Hindi sila sumali.
Nakikita nila bigger picture.
So, ganun ho. We're really just trying. And isa din sa nakita nating gap ay yung sa information. What is happening, kasi very consistent din ng OPAP sa pagsasabi na ongoing yung kanilang talks with the MNLF, and yet this is not heard and not known sa ground. So kung ano ho yung sinasabi, kung meron mong mga spoilers, I think these are the very people na nagpapalaganap ng misinformation. No? So para yung propaganda.
The propaganda.
Yes.
The problem with media is sometimes it's not the truth or it's the incomplete truth. And it can distort the picture. OPAP, even before Ding Deles, Secretary Deles, the problem is she suffers the perception of not necessarily being too straight or too straightforward, and the story is much bigger when you look at it. Kasi kayo, you're part of it.
Yes.
Diba? So, nakikita nyo, iba naman ang talagang, if only you could really deliver the complete news as it is. But it's not easy to do this. You've got ABS-CBN and Bong Navarro. We've got, all of a sudden, yung mga bagyo sa Mindanao, hindi na natin natitignan. Gusto natin habulin si Bong Navarro, di ba? Parang, ano ba naman to? Di ba? So it gets frustrating. Maybe a strong media background or support or infrastructure should be behind your efforts, di ba? Para malaman naman ng taong bayan, alam mo, progreso lang ang hinahanap natin sa Muslim Mindanao
Ano po, sir, if I may know, what we really want and what we need is, speaking of media, yung media with correct perspective, the right Mindanao perspective, yung hindi yung pupunta lang para i-cover ang isang issue, nang hindi alam kung ano ba yung pinanggalingan nun. Yun siguro ang importante.
Kasi malalim ang story.
Malalim.
And there are other stories that, alam mo, naguguluhan din ng masang Pilipino. Those in the north, those in Cebu, those in the Bicol region. Because just recently, we had the issue of Sabah and the Sultan. Di ba? So, ako naman, reading the newspapers, gulo na naman ang Mindanao. Ayan na naman, di ba? And then, of course, you've got the MNLF, the aging Miswari, who the military says, wala na, spent powers na yan, spent. How can you be a spent power if you can still siege? You can have a siege and cause death to so many and damage, di ba? Because during that time, I'm sure you were all like watching it with despair.
Sobra ho.
Di ba?
I wasn't able to really... Nasa loob lang ako ng kwarto for 3 days. Ganun siya ka.
Kasi walang progress yun
Exactly.
Walang pupuntahan Miski militar, miski lahat, kita mo ngayon, hirap pa rin sila lahat. It's so easy to destroy. It can take a day or a minute, but it takes years and decades to build. And it's hard enough of all cities pa, Zamboanga.
And until now po
I just read
we
recently.
want to also
Pinakatira pa daw sa
marami pa po.
Marami pa rin.
Yes, and marami ring namamatay. And it has taken on different phases yung humanitarian crisis doon.
And yet, when Yolanda happened, because of the international press, because of the one-off storm surge, which no one has seen, kasi sa lakas nga naman bagyo, it overtook Bohol, it overtook Zamboanga. Hey, paano naman kami dito? Kawawa naman kami. Anong nangyari? Lahat pumunta. Just today or just yesterday, the King of Sweden, pumunta na naman sa Tacloban, nagbigay na naman ng $100 million. Paano naman kami?
Andito pa kami.
Nandito pa kami. Tapos bumabagyo pa, binabaha pa kayo.
Yes. And kasama na din po siguro yun, yung healing. Kasi iba po kasi yung natural na calamity at yung nangyari sa Zamboanga. May kasama siyang trauma, emotionally, and andun yung, kaya nga kami na nag-work for interfaith malaki din yung talagang naging challenge. Sabi namin na we've really been, for years, yung bridges na binibuild namin between the Muslims and non-Muslims, and then all of a sudden, no? So isa din yung kailangan po namin tutukan.
But is conflict interfaith? If
Hindi
I'm not
po.
mistaken, hindi religion.
Hindi siya,
That's
hindi
not
siya.
a religious war.
Hindi siya
It's a
religion.
war for prosperity, economics.
Yes, hindi
Diba?
po siya religion, pero somehow medyo bumalik yung mga
Baka media lang yung perception, but it's not. Correct me if I'm wrong.
hindi ho siya. Yun nga yung kailangan nating i-counter na hindi po ito an issue of faith. Kailangan nating ipaliwanag sa mga tao yun.
It's the disparity of wealth.
Exactly.
Diba?
Yes.
Inequality. Kasi you should have your fair share at kinukulangan how can you develop if you don't have the power of capital to develop it. Diba? Hindi kaya eh. Ando doon na nga kayo, nakatabi pa, at hindi naintindihan ng media. Kaya tuloy, ang bansa, nakikita, hindi, alam mo mga yan, gera ng gera, mga yan, Katoliko, tsaka Kristiyano at Muslim.
Yun po kasi may mga ganong twist. May mga ganong twisting of
I can
stories.
imagine how frustrating,
Oo, very frustrating. When in fact, kung titingnan mo talagang, ang dami ring, on both sides, no? Ang dami ring victims.
Tapos yung mga those that get into media, nauuna, magbibigay ng 1, 2 words, 3 words, pumutok na, nawala na. Nawala na kayo sa perspective nyo.
Nawala na.
And then, of course, we had we had that really awful, what's his name, the ampatuan, yung nagkagulo-gulo. Again, it put mud in the character, the perception of the conflict that is down there, which is nothing but economic.
Economic.
Economic lang eh. And yet lumabas, may murderer dyan, may abuse, di ba? May magnanakaw, lumala na tuloy.
Nag-iiba na po yung mukha niya. Hindi na kung ano talaga. Kaya minsan, hindi mo natututukan din talaga kung ano yung problema.
Representative Sitti, we will have to take a short break. We're at the bottom of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been discussing the real issues of economics, when really that's what it is. After all, what would legislators, the executive groups, and all the different leaders be mandated to do but economic prosperity? The cost of war, conflict, is but the perception generated by media, maybe because it was convenient, or maybe because it's highlighted when the bullet and the gun is shown. Believe me, if you are hungry, there is nothing, there is no law that will tell you you are not going to eat because you're poor. Ladies and gentlemen, alamin niyo po yan, ano? Ang batas, walang batas pag gutom ang tao. Kasi mamamatay ka rin naman eh. So there's no such law that will tell you, don't eat because you're poor. That's total stupidity. The issue is economic, and economic deprivation will push people to the end and to a corner where you don't want them to be. The problem is our perception and how we hold all the issues going on. This has turned political, and I believe this issue, even with the Bangsamoro peace deal that's being formulated and celebrated no less by the world, will get into politics. And I think this will become dirty for the next 2 to 3 months. Simply because, again, we're talking about Mindanao and, again, the Muslims. But hang on, isn't this part of our country? Aren't they Filipinos as well? And aren't the natural resources one and only? If I remember right, let's look at the map. Of course, this is a bad representation of the Philippines. But really, you have Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao. Unless you want to say, we own Mindanao, we own all the resources, and all those people should follow us, pero wag natin i-develop yan, kasi Muslim. There you go. When we come back, I hope you don't change your channels, we'll tackle the issues of what to expect from now until May. Stay with us. Take a short.